Welcome to Sleepy Science Brain. Tonight, we explore one quiet idea from modern physics. An idea that does not demand your attention. An idea you do not need to understand. The idea that reality may not be exactly what it appears to be. That the universe may be layered, emergent, encoded, gently unfolding from something deeper. This is not a lesson. It is an invitation. An invitation to let the universe hold you for a while. Imagine the calm feeling of lying beneath a vast night sky. Nothing to analyze. Nothing to reach for. Just the quiet sense of being part of something much larger than yourself. There is no urgency here. No pressure to follow every thought. No need for answers. You do not need to listen closely. You do not need to remember what is said. You can drift in and out. Let your attention soften. Let your thoughts come and go. The narration will continue whether you are listening or not. It does not build toward a conclusion. It does not ask anything of you. It simply moves forward. Slowly, steadily, creating a space where questions can exist without answers. Where wonder is present without effort. Where the mind is allowed to rest. Tonight is not about solving the universe. There is nothing you need to do now. Nothing you need to hold on to. You can let the words pass through you. Like distant stars moving quietly across the sky. You are allowed to rest. Let us begin. Reality feels solid most of the time. It feels continuous. It feels like something that simply is. The ground beneath us seems stable. The air around us seems present. The objects we touch seem fully there. This feeling is old. It is familiar. It does not ask for permission. Most days, we do not question it. Most days, there is no reason to. The world appears as it appears. Things exist as they exist. This has always seemed enough. But sometimes, in certain corners of thought, a quieter voice begins. Not loud. Not insistent. Just present. It asks a different kind of question. Not whether reality is real. Not whether things exist. But whether the feeling of solidity is the whole story. Whether what we experience is the only layer. Whether the surface we see is also the foundation. Science does not always move forward by proving things. Sometimes it moves by pausing. By wondering. By allowing a small question to sit without needing an answer right away. One of those questions is this. What if the universe is not exactly as it appears? Not in a dramatic way. Not in a way that changes daily life. But in a way that suggests something beneath the surface. Something other than what we assume. This is not a new question. It is not a modern question. But it has found new forms. In physics, in cosmology, in the study of black holes and information and the nature of space itself, a possibility has emerged. Not a conclusion. Not a fact. A possibility. That reality as we know it may not be fundamental. That it may be something else. Something projected. Something emergent. Something built from rules we do not yet see. This does not mean the world is false. It does not mean things disappear. It means the nature of things may be different than the feeling of things. The texture of existence may not match its structure. The universe may be layered in ways we cannot touch. This idea does not demand belief. It does not require agreement. It simply exists as a thought. A direction. A place where certain theories point. Some physicists have followed this direction. Not because it is proven, but because it is consistent with certain observations. Certain patterns. Certain strange behaviors at the edges of what we can measure. They do not claim to know. They suggest. They explore. They build models that treat space and time not as givens, but as outcomes. Not as the stage on which reality happens, but as part of the performance itself. This feels strange at first. It feels distant. But strangeness is not the same as wrongness. The universe has been strange before. It was strange when we learned the Earth was not the center. It was strange when we learned time could stretch and compress. It was strange when we learned particles could exist in two states until observed. Strangeness has become part of how we understand things. And now, in some theories, reality itself is being reconsidered. Not dismissed. Not denied. Reconsidered. The idea is this. What if the three-dimensional universe we move through is not the deepest level? What if it is encoded somewhere else? Somewhere simpler. Somewhere with fewer dimensions. And what we experience here, in this space, is a kind of translation. Not a copy. Not an illusion. A projection. Like information displayed on a surface, but originating from something flatter. Something more fundamental. This does not mean we are living in a simulation. That is a different idea. This means the structure of space itself may be emergent. That it arises from something else. That depth, distance, and dimension may not be the starting point. They may be the result. No one is certain this is true. No one can prove it yet. But the idea has found a place in serious thought. In equations. In models of black holes and quantum gravity and the behavior of information near event horizons. It is not fringe. It is not fantasy. It is theoretical. It is provisional. It is a whisper from the edge of what we know. And it suggests that reality may be softer than it feels. More flexible. More open to reinterpretation. This does not change the feeling of the ground beneath us. It does not change the weight of objects or the passage of time. But it changes the question we are asking. Instead of asking what things are made of, we begin asking what it means for something to exist. Instead of assuming space is a container, we begin asking whether space is constructed. Instead of treating reality as obvious, we treat it as mysterious. Not in a way that creates fear. In a way that creates room. Room for uncertainty. Room for wonder. Room to sit inside a question without needing to resolve it. This chapter is not here to teach. It is here to hold a thought. To let it be present without pressure. The universe may be a projection. Or it may not be. Either way, the question itself is enough. The question itself is part of the landscape now. And we can rest inside it. Without conclusion. Without certainty. Without needing to know. If the universe is a projection, we are still here. We are still present. We still feel warmth. We still feel cold. We still move through rooms and speak and sleep and wake. Nothing about the structure of reality changes the texture of living. The question of whether space is fundamental does not touch the feeling of being in space. The question of whether reality is encoded elsewhere does not change the fact that we are encoded too. We are part of whatever this is. Not separate from it. Not observing from outside. We are inside the system. Whatever the system is made of, we are made of it also. This is important to rest with. The idea of a projection does not mean falseness. It does not mean unreality. It means that what we experience may arise from something we do not directly see. But the arising is real. The experience is real. A projection is not less than what it projects. It is a form of it. If reality is emergent, then so are we. If space is constructed, then so are our bodies. If time is not fundamental, then neither are our memories. But we still have memories. We still have bodies. We still exist in time, even if time itself is built from something else. There is no loss here. Only a shift in understanding. A shift in what we call fundamental. The universe may be layered, but we live in the layer we live in. And that layer is complete. It does not depend on us knowing what it rests upon. A tree does not need to understand soil chemistry to grow. A river does not need to understand gravity to flow. We do not need to understand the structure of reality to move through it. Consciousness exists in this space. Not above it. Not beyond it. Inside it. Consciousness is something that happens. Something that arises. It does not control the universe. It does not generate reality. It experiences reality. It is part of the pattern. Part of the encoding. If the universe is a projection, then consciousness is part of what is being projected. It is not separate from the system. It is woven into it. This does not diminish consciousness. It places it exactly where it is. Here. Now. Present. Experiencing what there is to experience. We make choices. We feel like we make choices. We decide when to stand, when to sit, when to speak, when to stay quiet. Those feelings do not disappear if reality is layered. The feeling of choice is still present. The sense of agency is still part of the texture of living. Whether that choice is fundamental or emergent does not change the experience of it. We still feel it. We still live through it. The question of free will is old. It is older than projection theories. It is older than modern physics. And it remains unanswered. Not because no one has tried to answer it, but because the answer may not be the kind of thing that resolves. We can live well without knowing. We can make choices without understanding the mechanics of choice. We can feel real without proving realness. This is not avoidance. This is acceptance. Acceptance that some questions do not close. Some mysteries do not end. And we are still here. Still living. Still moving forward. The universe may be a projection, but the projection includes everything we are. It includes love. It includes confusion. It includes joy. It includes boredom. It includes the feeling of being tired at the end of a long day. It includes the sound of breathing in a quiet room. None of this is removed by the question of structure. None of this depends on us knowing the answer. We live inside the system, whatever the system is. We experience what there is to experience. And the experiencing is enough. It has always been enough. The idea of a projection does not create distance. It does not place reality somewhere else, out of reach. It suggests that what we call reality is the surface of something deeper. But the surface is where we live. The surface is where experience happens. And the surface is complete. We do not need access to the deeper layer to live well on this one. We do not need to understand encoding to feel the warmth of sunlight. We do not need to know how space is constructed to move through it. The universe holds us whether we understand it or not. It has always held us. And it continues to hold us now. We are not outside looking in. We are inside, being held. Part of the structure. Part of the pattern. Part of whatever this is. And that is where we rest. Not in certainty. Not in knowledge. But in presence. In the simple fact of being here. Of continuing. Of experiencing. The projection, if it is a projection, includes us completely. We are not separate from it. We are not less real because of it. We are part of it. And that is enough. It has always been enough. We can rest here. Inside the question. inside the uncertainty, inside the universe, whatever its structure. We are held. We are present. We are here. Black holes exist at the edges of what we can observe. They are places where gravity becomes so strong that nothing escapes. Not light. Not matter. Not information. Or so it was thought. For a long time, black holes were understood as endpoints, as places where things disappeared, where the universe swallowed itself. But over time, a different picture began to form. Not through direct observation. Black holes cannot be seen in the usual way, but through mathematics, through theory, through the careful study of what should happen at those boundaries. And what emerged was unexpected. Black holes do not simply erase. They store. They hold information. Not in the way a book holds words. Not in the way a hard drive holds data. But in some form. In some structure. The information that falls into a black hole does not vanish. It remains. It persists. Encoded somehow on the boundary of the black hole itself. This idea came slowly. It came from physicists asking what happens when something crosses the event horizon. The event horizon is the edge. The point of no return. Beyond it, nothing can come back. But the horizon itself is not nothing. It is a surface. A boundary. And that boundary appears to have properties. One of those properties is entropy. Entropy is a measure of disorder. A measure of how much information a system contains. In most objects, entropy depends on volume. The larger the object, the more information it can hold. But black holes do not follow this rule. Their entropy depends on surface area. On the size of the event horizon itself. Not on what is inside. Not on the volume contained within. On the surface. This was discovered through equations. Through the work of physicists studying black holes in the early decades of modern cosmology. Stephen Hawking was one of those physicists. He studied black holes for much of his life. He discovered that black holes are not entirely black. They emit radiation. Slowly. Over vast timescales. This radiation carries energy away from the black hole. And as energy leaves, the black hole shrinks. Very slowly. Over periods longer than the current age of the universe. But it shrinks. And as it shrinks, the question arose. What happens to the information that fell in? Does it disappear with the black hole? Or does it escape somehow? This became known as a problem. A paradox. Not a dramatic problem. Not an urgent one. But a quiet inconsistency. A place where two ideas did not fit together. One idea said information cannot be destroyed. This is a principle from quantum mechanics. A rule that seems to hold everywhere. The other idea said black holes erase everything. That what falls in is gone. These two ideas did not agree. And so physicists began to ask, what if the information is not inside the black hole? What if it is on the surface? Encoded on the event horizon itself. This would explain why entropy depends on area. It would suggest that the boundary of a black hole is not just a line in space. It is a kind of storage. A kind of record. A surface that holds everything that has fallen in. Not as objects. Not as recognizable things. But as encoded information. As patterns. As structure. This idea is called the holographic principle. Not because black holes are holograms in the usual sense, but because the information inside a volume is stored on its boundary. Like a hologram stores a three-dimensional image on a two-dimensional surface. The black hole does something similar. It stores its contents on its edge. This is not proven. It is not observed directly, but it is consistent with the mathematics. It is consistent with what we know about entropy and information and quantum mechanics. And it suggests something larger. If black holes encode information on surfaces, perhaps the universe does too. Perhaps what we experience as three-dimensional space is also encoded on a boundary. Somewhere else. Somewhere we do not see. This is not a conclusion. It is a direction. A place the mathematics points. Black holes became more than objects in this view. They became clues. Quiet librarians holding records of everything that has entered them. Not destroying. Not erasing. Storing. In a form we do not yet fully understand. In a structure that does not match our intuition. But storing nonetheless. The event horizon is a surface. And surfaces, it turns out, may be more important than we thought. They may be where information lives. Where reality is written. Not in the volume. Not in the space we move through. But on the edges. On the boundaries. This changes how we think about black holes. They are no longer just places of destruction. They are places of encoding. Of preservation. Of memory. The universe's quiet librarians. Holding everything. Storing everything. In a form that is still being understood. The discovery that black holes store information on their surfaces was not loud. It did not arrive all at once. It emerged slowly. Through decades of thought. Through careful equations. Through the work of many people asking small questions. And those small questions led here. To a picture of black holes as boundaries that remember. As surfaces that encode. As edges that hold the universe's information. This picture is still being refined. It is still being tested in theory. But it has opened a door. A door to the idea that reality itself may work this way. That space may be encoded. That dimension may be emergent. That the universe may be a projection from a boundary we cannot see. Black holes pointed the way. Quietly. Without drama. Just by existing. Just by behaving strangely. And now we sit with what they have suggested. Not as fact. Not as certainty. But as possibility. As direction. As a question that continues. Sometimes information lives in unexpected places. Not where we think it should be. Not in the volume of a thing. But on its boundary. This is a quiet idea. It does not announce itself. It simply exists as a pattern that appears in certain theories. In certain equations. In certain ways of thinking about space and information. The idea is this. A surface can contain information about everything within it. Not as a summary. Not as a reduction. But as a complete encoding. Everything that happens in a volume can be written on its edge. This does not mean the volume disappears. It means the volume and the surface are connected. They describe the same thing in different ways. One is not more real than the other. They are two forms of the same information. This idea has a name. It is called the holographic principle. Not because reality is a hologram in the everyday sense. But because the relationship between a volume and its boundary resembles the way holograms work. A hologram is a flat surface that holds a three-dimensional image. The depth is encoded in the flatness. The space is written on the plane. The holographic principle suggests something similar happens in the universe. That three-dimensional space may be encoded on a two-dimensional boundary. That what we experience as depth and distance may emerge from something flatter. Something simpler. This does not mean we live on a surface. It means the information that describes our space may be stored on one. Somewhere we do not see. somewhere outside the space we move through. The surface is not physical in the usual sense. It is theoretical. It is mathematical. It is a boundary in the equations, a place where the rules change, where the encoding happens. We do not experience this boundary directly. We experience what it encodes. We live in the projection, in the space that emerges from the surface. This idea did not come from nowhere. It came from black holes, from the discovery that black hole entropy depends on surface area. That discovery suggested something larger. If a black hole's information lives on its surface, perhaps all information does. Perhaps space itself is structured this way. Perhaps the universe we move through is a kind of translation, a way of experiencing what is written elsewhere. This is not proven. It is not something we can test directly yet. But it is consistent. It fits with what we know about black holes. It fits with certain approaches to quantum gravity. It fits with the mathematics of string theory. It is a direction many physicists have explored, not because they are certain, but because the idea keeps appearing. It keeps being useful. It keeps explaining things that are hard to explain otherwise. The holographic principle suggests that reality is emergent. That space is not fundamental. That dimension arises from something else. From rules. From relationships. From patterns on a boundary. This does not make reality less real. It makes it layered. It suggests that what we call space is built, not by us, not by consciousness, but by the structure of the universe itself, by the way information organizes, by the way boundaries encode. A surface tells the whole story, not in words, not in images, but in structure, in the arrangement of information, in the patterns that describe everything within. We do not see the surface. We see what it describes. We live in the space it encodes. And that space feels complete. It feels solid. It feels like the only layer. But the holographic principle suggests otherwise. It suggests there is another layer. A simpler one. A flatter one. And that layer is where the information lives. This does not change our experience. We still move through 3 dimensions. We still experience depth and distance. But the structure beneath that experience may be different. It may be encoded. It may emerge from a boundary we never touch. The idea is subtle. It does not ask us to imagine a flat universe. It asks us to consider that flatness and depth are both present. That they are 2 descriptions of the same thing. That the volume we live in and the surface it emerges from are connected. Inseparably. Completely. This is hard to hold in the mind. Not because it is complicated, but because it does not match intuition. We are used to thinking of space as given, as the background, as the container. The holographic principle suggests space is constructed, that it arises, that it is not the starting point. The starting point is the boundary, the surface, the place where information is written. And from that surface, space unfolds. Dimension emerges. Distance becomes real. We move through what has been encoded. We experience the projection. And the projection is complete. It does not feel like a projection. It feels like reality. And it is reality. Just not the deepest layer of it. The holographic principle does not replace the universe. It reframes it. It suggests that what we know is emergent. That depth comes from flatness. That space comes from surface. That reality unfolds from a boundary. This idea continues. It is still being explored. Still being tested in theory. still being applied to black holes and cosmology and quantum mechanics. It has not been proven, but it has not been disproven either. It remains as a possibility, as a direction, as a way of thinking about reality that keeps appearing, quietly, persistently. The surface tells the whole story, not as a metaphor, as a principle, as a structure, as a way the universe may work. We rest inside this idea, not needing to understand it fully, not needing to prove it, just allowing it to be present, allowing it to suggest what it suggests. That reality is layered, that surfaces encode, that space emerges, and that we are here, moving through what has emerged, living in the projection, complete, present, held by the structure, whatever that structure is. For a long time, particles seemed like the end of the search. The smallest things, the building blocks, the fundamental pieces of reality, electrons, quarks, photons, tiny units that could not be divided further. This picture was clean. It was clear. It suggested that if we kept breaking things down, we would eventually reach the bottom, the final layer, the place where reality begins. But over time, that certainty softened, not because particles were disproven, but because they began to seem less like endings and more like patterns, less like objects and more like behaviors, less like things and more like events. Physicists began to suspect that particles may not be fundamental, that they may be expressions of something else, something deeper, something we do not yet have words for. This suspicion came from mathematics, from the way particles behave in quantum mechanics, from the way they appear and disappear, from the way they exist in states that are not quite one thing or another. Particles began to look less solid than they once did, less like tiny marbles and more like ripples in a field, like vibrations, like disturbances in something more basic. The field became important in this view, not the particle itself, but what the particle emerges from. Fields stretch through space. They are everywhere, and particles are places where those fields are excited, where energy gathers, where something momentarily appears. This is still the language of physics. It is still technical, but it suggests a shift, a move away from things and toward processes, away from objects and toward relationships, away from particles and toward patterns. The patterns may be what is real, not the particles themselves. The particles may be how we experience the patterns, how we translate them into something we can name, something we can measure. But the patterns may go deeper. They may be woven from rules we do not see, from structures that exist in dimensions we do not move through. Dimensions are mentioned sometimes in physics, not as places we can visit, but as mathematical possibilities, as ways of organizing information, as directions that exist in theory but not in experience. Our universe appears to have 3 dimensions of space: length, width, height, and 1 dimension of time. But some theories suggest there may be more. Not more space in the usual sense, but more directions, more ways for things to be organized. These extra dimensions, if they exist, are not visible. They are not accessible in daily life. They are compacted, hidden, folded into the structure of space itself. We do not experience them, but they may shape what we do experience. They may determine how particles behave, how forces work, how reality unfolds. This is speculative. It is not proven, but it is part of the search for a deeper framework, a framework that goes beyond particles, beyond objects, beyond the things we can see and touch. Our senses did not evolve to see ultimate truth. They evolved for survival, for navigating a world of predators and food and shelter, for recognizing patterns that matter in daily life, not for perceiving the structure of space-time, not for seeing quantum fields, not for experiencing extra dimensions. Our senses give us an interface, a way of interacting with reality that is useful, that is functional, but not necessarily complete. The world we perceive is simplified. It is filtered. It is shaped by what our brains can process, by what our bodies need to know. This does not mean our perceptions are false. It means they are partial. They show us one layer, one translation, one version of what is there. The deeper framework may be different. It may be stranger. It may involve relationships instead of objects, patterns instead of particles, vibrations instead of solid things. It may involve dimensions we cannot picture, structures we cannot visualize, rules that do not match our intuition. And yet, from that deeper framework, the world we know emerges. The particles appear. The forces act. The universe behaves as it behaves. We experience what we experience. And that experience is real. It is not false because it is emergent. It is not less because it is simplified. It is what it is. A layer of reality. A translation. An interface. But beneath it, the framework continues. The patterns continue. The structures that give rise to particles continue. We do not need to see them to be part of them. We do not need to understand them to be shaped by them. They are there, holding everything, organizing everything, allowing everything we know to exist. Physics reaches toward this deeper framework, not with certainty, not with answers, but with questions, with models, with mathematics that suggests patterns beyond particles, fields beyond forces, dimensions beyond the three we move through. This search is ongoing. It has been ongoing for decades. It will continue for decades more. And it may never reach a final answer. But it suggests something. It suggests that reality is layered. That what we see is not the foundation. That particles are not the beginning. That space and time and dimension may all be emergent. May all arise from something else. Something we are still reaching toward. Still trying to describe. Still trying to name. We rest with this uncertainty. With the idea that particles may not be fundamental. That reality may be woven from something deeper. That our experience is partial. That the framework beneath us is vast. And hidden. And present. Always present. Holding us. Shaping us. Allowing us to exist. Even if we never see it fully. Even if we never understand it completely. It is there. Beneath the particles. Beneath the objects. Beneath the world we know. And we are part of it. Woven into it. Emerging from it. As everything does. Sometimes two descriptions point to the same thing. They use different words. Different structures. Different languages. But they describe the same reality. This happens in physics. Not often. But sometimes. And when it happens, it suggests something. It suggests that reality can be seen from more than one angle. That what seems like two separate things may be one thing appearing differently. In the study of gravity and quantum mechanics, this happened. Two descriptions were found. Both mathematical. Both precise. But entirely different in form. One description involved space. It included gravity. It included depth. It described a universe with dimension, with curvature, with the bending of space-time. The other description did not include gravity. It did not include depth in the same way. It lived on a boundary, on a surface. It was flatter, more constrained, but equally complete. These two descriptions should have been different. They should have pointed to different realities. But they did not. They matched perfectly. Every prediction made in the first description could be translated into the second. Every behavior in the second could be found in the first. They were not separate. They were two ways of describing the same thing. This discovery emerged slowly. It came from theoretical work in the late part of the 20th century. From physicists studying string theory and black holes and the nature of spacetime. They were not looking for this correspondence. They were exploring different problems. But the correspondence appeared. Quietly. Unexpectedly. And it has remained. The correspondence has a name. It is called ADS CFT. The letters stand for technical terms. Terms that do not need to be understood. The important part is not the name. It is what the correspondence suggests. It suggests that a universe with gravity can be perfectly described by a theory without gravity. That a space with depth can be encoded on a surface. That dimension itself may be emergent. May be something that arises from rules on a boundary. This is not metaphor. It is mathematics. It is a precise relationship between two frameworks. Both frameworks work. Both make predictions. Both describe reality. But one includes space as we know it, and the other does not. And yet they are equivalent. They are two forms of the same information. The description with gravity feels familiar. It includes distance. It includes time. It includes the curvature of space around massive objects. It includes black holes and galaxies and the structure of the cosmos. It feels like the universe we live in. The description without gravity is different. It lives on a boundary. It has fewer dimensions. It does not include space in the usual sense. It is a quantum theory. A theory of fields and particles and interactions. But no gravity. No curvature. No depth. And yet, this flat description contains all the information of the deeper one. Everything that happens in the space with gravity can be found in the boundary theory. Every event. Every particle. Every interaction. It is all there. Encoded. Written in a different language. But present. This suggests something profound. It suggests that space may not be fundamental. That the depth we experience may be a translation. A way of organizing information from a boundary. The boundary is simpler. It has fewer dimensions. But it contains everything. And from it, space emerges. Gravity emerges. The universe we know emerges. Not as a copy. Not as a simulation. But as another form of the same thing. This correspondence has been tested. Not experimentally. Not directly. But mathematically. Physicists have compared predictions from both descriptions. They have checked whether they agree. And they do. In every case studied so far, they agree. This does not prove the correspondence is universal. It does not prove our universe works this way. But it proves that such a relationship is possible. That a universe with space can be perfectly equivalent to a theory without space. That dimension can be emergent. That reality can be encoded on a boundary. The two descriptions are not competing. They are complementary. They are two perspectives on the same structure. One feels deep and spacious. The other feels flat and precise. But they point to the same reality. They describe the same events, the same information, the same universe. This is quiet amazement. Not loud, not dramatic, but persistent. The fact that two such different descriptions can match so perfectly suggests something about the nature of reality. It suggests that reality is flexible, that it can be seen from different angles, that what seems fundamental from one perspective may be emergent from another. Space seems fundamental to us. We move through it. We live in it. It feels like the foundation. But the correspondence suggests otherwise. It suggests space is constructed, that it arises from relationships on a boundary, that it is a way of organizing information. Not the only way, but the way we experience. The boundary theory does not feel like a place. It does not include the things we associate with space, but it describes them. It predicts them. It contains them, and from it, the space we know unfolds. The depth appears. The distance becomes real. The universe takes shape. This is not a process that happens in time. It is a relationship, a correspondence, a way two descriptions point to the same thing. We live in the description with space. We experience depth and distance. We feel gravity. We move through 3 dimensions. But that description may be equivalent to another. A flatter one. A simpler one. A boundary where all the information lives. We do not see the boundary. We see what it describes. We live in the space that emerges from it. And that space is complete. It does not depend on us knowing about the boundary. It does not require us to understand the correspondence. It simply is. And the correspondence simply is. 2 worlds. 1 description. 2 languages. 1 reality. This remains. It continues to be studied, to be explored, to be applied to different problems in physics. It has not been proven to apply to our universe. But it shows that such a relationship is possible. That space can emerge. That dimension can be constructed. That reality can be encoded on a surface. And we rest with this. With the knowledge that 2 descriptions exist. That they match. That they point to the same thing. Quietly. Precisely. Without contradiction. 2 worlds. 1 description. Science sometimes listens more than it declares. It observes. It measures. It waits. It looks for patterns that might suggest something. Not proof. Not certainty. Just hints. Just echoes of structure beneath what we can see. The universe leaves traces. In light. In radiation. In the way energy moves through space. These traces are subtle. They require sensitive instruments. They require patience. They require careful analysis over years. One place physicists look is in the cosmic background radiation. This is light that has been traveling through space since very early in the universe. It comes from all directions. It fills the sky. It is faint. It is old. But it carries information. Information about the early universe. About how matter was distributed. About how space itself was structured. This radiation has been measured many times. By satellites. By telescopes. By instruments designed to detect the smallest variations. And within that radiation, there are patterns. Tiny fluctuations. Small differences in temperature from one region to another. These fluctuations are expected. They match predictions from cosmology. But physicists continue to study them. To see if there is anything unusual. Anything that does not fit the standard models. anything that might suggest a deeper structure. So far, nothing definitive has appeared. No clear sign of something beyond what is expected. But the search continues. Because if space is emergent, if reality is encoded on a boundary, there might be traces. Small effects. Patterns that do not quite match. Variations that suggest something beneath the surface. These would not be obvious. They would be subtle, hidden in the data, requiring careful work to distinguish from noise. Another place physicists look is in the structure of space itself. They search for what is sometimes called graininess. The idea that space, at the smallest scales, might not be smooth. That it might have a texture, a limit to how finely it can be divided. This graininess, if it exists, would be incredibly small. Far smaller than anything we can observe directly. But it might leave effects. Tiny distortions in light as it travels over vast distances. Small deviations in the behavior of particles at high energies. Patterns that suggest space is not continuous but structured. Experiments have been designed to search for these effects. They look at distant objects, at gamma rays from faraway galaxies, at the way light bends near massive structures. They measure with great precision, looking for deviations, looking for signs that space has a fundamental scale. So far, nothing has been found. No clear evidence of graininess. No definitive sign that space is discrete rather than smooth. But the absence of evidence is not the same as evidence of absence. It simply means the effects, if they exist, are smaller than current instruments can detect, or that they appear in ways we have not yet learned to measure. The search is ongoing. Instruments improve. Sensitivity increases. New methods are developed. And physicists continue to listen, to watch the data, to look for echoes. This is not dramatic work. It is careful work. It involves long periods of measurement, long periods of analysis, long periods of checking and rechecking. Most experiments find nothing unusual. Most measurements match expectations. But that is part of the process. Science moves slowly when it is searching for something subtle, when it is looking for patterns that might not be there, or that might be there but hidden. The cosmic background radiation continues to be studied. New maps are made. New instruments are launched. Each one slightly more sensitive than the last. Each one capable of seeing finer details, smaller fluctuations, more distant signals. And with each new measurement, the question is asked again. Is there anything here that does not fit? Anything that suggests a deeper structure? Anything that points toward space being emergent rather than fundamental? The answer so far has been no. But the question remains open. The experiments searching for graininess continue as well. They observe high-energy particles. They track gamma rays across billions of light-years. They measure the timing of signals from distant pulsars. They look for tiny delays, tiny distortions, anything that might suggest space has a structure at the smallest scales. And they find nothing yet. Nothing definitive. But they continue. Because the possibility remains. The possibility that space is not smooth. That it is built from something. That it has a scale beneath which it cannot be divided. This possibility is consistent with some theories, with some approaches to quantum gravity, with some versions of the holographic principle. But consistency is not proof. It is simply permission to keep looking. Science does not demand that an idea be proven before it is explored. It only demands that the idea be testable, that there be some way, in principle, to search for evidence. And there are ways. Subtle ways. Ways that require precision and time. Ways that may not yield answers quickly, but ways nonetheless. The echoes in the data, if they exist, are faint. They are hidden among many other signals, among noise and variation and the natural complexity of the universe. Finding them requires care, requires patience, requires the willingness to measure again and again, to refine methods, to improve instruments, to wait. And so physicists wait. They listen. They observe. They do not claim to have found proof of emergent space. They do not declare that the holographic principle is confirmed. They simply continue the work of looking, of measuring, of searching for patterns that might suggest something. This is how science moves when it is uncertain, when it is exploring rather than confirming, when it is asking rather than answering. It listens. It watches. It remains open to what the data might show. And the data, so far, is quiet. It does not shout answers. It does not reveal clear signs. It simply continues. Steady, neutral, present. And the experiments continue as well. Searching for echoes. Searching for hints. Searching for anything that might point toward a deeper structure. Toward space being emergent. Toward reality being encoded. The search is not over. It may never be over. But it continues. Quietly. Carefully. Without urgency. Without certainty. Just the steady work of listening. Of looking. Of waiting for what the universe might reveal. Not knowing is not failure. It is not weakness. It is not something to fix immediately. Not knowing is a place where questions rest, where curiosity lives without pressure, where the mind can be present without needing to solve. We are taught to seek answers, to resolve uncertainty, to move from question to conclusion as quickly as possible. But some questions do not close quickly. Some questions remain open for lifetimes, for generations. And that openness is not a problem. It is simply the nature of certain questions. The question of whether the universe is a projection is one of these. It is not settled. It is not resolved. It may not be resolved for a long time. And that is acceptable. That is how it is. Science does not always move toward final answers. Sometimes it moves toward better questions, toward more refined ways of asking, toward frameworks that hold more possibilities. The story of understanding is not linear. It does not move in a straight line from ignorance to knowledge. It moves in circles sometimes. It doubles back. It pauses. It explores directions that lead nowhere. And then it continues. This is not inefficiency. This is the process. The process of learning what can be learned. Of discovering what can be discovered. Of sitting with what cannot yet be known. The idea that the universe may be a projection is part of this process. It is not a conclusion. It is a direction. A framework. A way of organizing certain observations. It may be true. It may be incomplete. It may be replaced by something else in time. But for now, it exists as a possibility. As a way of thinking about space and dimension and reality. And that is enough. We do not need to know if it is true tonight. We do not need to resolve it before we sleep. We can let it rest. Let it be present without demanding certainty. Let it exist as a question that does not press for an answer. This is a kind of surrender. Not giving up, but letting go of the need to conclude. Letting go of the pressure to understand completely. Allowing the mind to be with a question without needing to solve it. Wonder is often treated as the beginning of a process, as the spark that leads to discovery. But wonder can also be an end in itself, a place to rest, a state that does not need to resolve into knowledge. We can wonder about the structure of reality without needing to determine it. We can sit with the possibility that space is emergent without needing proof. We can hold the question lightly, without urgency, without strain. The universe does not ask us to understand it fully. It does not require our comprehension. It continues whether we know its structure or not, whether we resolve the question of projection or leave it open. It simply is, and we are part of it, held by it, moving through it. Understanding or not understanding does not change that. We are here either way, present either way. The beauty of not knowing is that it removes pressure. It removes the weight of needing to be right, of needing to have answers, of needing to explain. We can simply observe, simply wonder, simply allow the question to exist. Science will continue its work. Physicists will continue to explore, to measure, to theorize, to test. They will refine the holographic principle. They will search for evidence of emergent space. They will ask new questions and develop new methods. And perhaps someday they will know more. Or perhaps the question will transform into something else, into a different framework, a different way of thinking about reality. But that work does not require our participation tonight. It does not need us to stay awake, to keep thinking, to keep trying to understand. We can let it go. We can let the question rest. We can allow ourselves to not know. And in that not knowing, there is peace. There is spaciousness. There is room for the mind to soften, to release effort, to simply be present without needing to figure anything out. Reality will continue to be what it is. The universe will continue to exist. Space will continue to hold us. Whether it is fundamental or emergent, whether it is a projection or something else entirely, we are held either way. We are safe either way. The question can wait. It has waited this long. It can wait longer. And we can rest, not in answers, but in the quiet space where questions live, where uncertainty is not a problem to solve, but a place to be, a place to breathe, a place to let the mind settle. Wonder does not demand resolution. It simply asks us to be present, to notice, to allow, and we can do that without effort, without strain, without needing to know what comes next. The universe is vast. It is old. It contains mysteries that may never be fully resolved. And that vastness is not threatening. It is not something to conquer. It is something to rest inside, to be held by, to allow ourselves to be small within, small and safe, small and present, small and exactly where we are. Not knowing is beautiful because it is honest. It does not pretend. It does not claim more than it can claim. It simply acknowledges what is true, that we do not have all the answers, that we may never have all the answers, and that this is acceptable. This is enough. We can be here, in this moment, with this question, with this uncertainty, and we can let it be. We can let ourselves be, without needing to resolve anything, without needing to understand anything. Just present, just breathing, just here. The beauty of not knowing is that it allows rest. It allows the mind to stop working, to stop searching, to stop trying to figure things out. And in that stopping, there is quiet. There is stillness. There is the possibility of sleep, of letting go, of allowing the day to end without conclusions. without answers, without needing anything to be different than it is. The universe may be a projection, or it may not be, and tonight, that question can rest. It can wait. It can simply be, as we simply are, present, held, safe in not knowing. We have moved through ideas tonight, through questions about reality, through possibilities about space and dimension, through theories that suggest the universe may be layered, may be encoded, may be something other than it appears. But these ideas do not need to be carried forward. They do not need to be remembered. They can simply drift, simply fade, simply rest where they are. The universe continues whether we think about it or not, whether we hold these questions or release them. It simply is. And we are held within it, safe within it, present within it. Reality may be a projection. Space may be emergent. Particles may arise from deeper patterns. Or none of this may be true. It does not matter tonight. Tonight is for rest, for letting go, for allowing the mind to soften, to release effort, to stop following the thread of thought. The ideas can remain behind. They will still be there tomorrow, still be there in the world, still be explored by those who explore them. But they do not need us right now. They do not need our attention. They do not need our understanding. We can let them go. Let them drift away. Let them dissolve into the background, into the quiet, into the space where thoughts go when they are no longer needed. Black holes may store information on their surfaces. The holographic principle may describe reality. Experiments may search for echoes in the data, or they may not. And that is acceptable. That is how things are. We can rest with not knowing. We can rest with uncertainty. We can rest without conclusions, without answers, without needing anything to be resolved. The story does not need to continue. It can pause here. It can end here. Or it can simply fade, becoming quieter, becoming softer, becoming less distinct, like shapes in the distance that slowly disappear, like sounds that grow faint, like thoughts that lose their edges, that blur, that dissolve, that become part of the background, part of the stillness. We do not need to follow anymore. We do not need to listen closely. We do not need to hold on to what was said. It can all drift away, all fade, all become quiet. The universe is vast. It is old. It holds mysteries. But those mysteries do not require our presence tonight. They do not need us to stay awake, to keep thinking, to keep wondering. They will be there tomorrow, still mysterious, still present, still waiting if we choose to return. But for now, we release them. We let them go. We allow the mind to rest, to settle, to become still. Space may be emergent, or it may not be. Reality may be encoded on a boundary, or it may not be. We may be living in a projection, or we may not be. And none of this matters right now. Right now is for breathing, for stillness, for allowing the body to rest, for allowing the mind to quiet, for letting everything soften, everything fade, everything drift into silence. The questions can wait. The theories can wait. The search for understanding can wait. It has waited this long. It can wait longer. And we can rest. Deeply. Completely. Without holding anything. Without carrying anything forward. Just present. Just breathing. Just here. In this moment. In this quiet. In this stillness. The universe continues around us. It continues above us. It continues beneath us, holding us, supporting us, allowing us to rest. We are safe here. We are held here. We are exactly where we need to be. And the ideas fade. The words fade. The thoughts fade. Everything becomes softer, quieter, less defined, like drifting, like floating, like letting go. The story has ended, or it has paused, or it continues somewhere in the background, quietly, so quietly it cannot be heard anymore, so softly it blends with silence, with stillness, with the gentle space between waking and sleep. We can let go now. We can stop following. We can allow everything to fade, to dissolve, to become nothing, just breathing, just stillness, just rest. The universe may be a projection, or it may be something else, and we are here, safe, held, resting in not knowing, resting in quiet, resting in stillness. And that is enough. That has always been enough. We can rest now, deeply, completely, without anything more to carry, without anything more to hold. Just here, just breathing, just still. And the words fade, and the thoughts fade, and everything becomes quiet, becomes soft, becomes gentle, becomes rest, becomes sleep, becomes nothing, just this, just now, just stillness, just rest.